When it comes to pour-over drippers, the market is stacked with options, and they come in a wide variety of sizes, shapes, and materials. And with those changes in design comes changes in the way they brew and the coffee they produce. Now, I've seen some comparisons focusing on a wide variety of brewers, but I felt like it would be worth it to narrow it down to one particular style in an effort to reduce variables. Essentially putting them head-to-head on a more even playing field, and in my mind producing results that are more easily comparable. So as you maybe noticed from the title of this video, I'll be focusing down on those known as a flat bottom, which as you can see is pretty self-explanatory. Now, you may be asking yourself which aspects of these brewers we're going to be looking at and comparing. Well, I'm glad you asked. For one, ease of use, i.e. simplicity. No wild techniques, additional tools, or general funny business, just pouring water over coffee and getting good results. Also, in that same vein, consistency, meaning how it performs brew after brew, and its level of variation or lack thereof. And finally, taste and extraction, which fundamentally are linked, and arguably the whole reason we're brewing coffee to begin with. But before we get into all this flat bottom goodness, a quick word from this video's sponsor, Bright Cellars. Coffee and wine share a lot of similarities. Both are made from fruits that embody the flavors of their origin, soil type, variety, and processing. And even in the cup, they're described in similar ways, with flavor notes, aroma, body, and even acidity being part of the lingo. So when Bright Cellars reached out and offered to sponsor a video, I was excited to put my palate to the test in a new way. The process is as simple as hopping on their website, taking their 7-question quiz, and getting matched up with a personalized set of wines curated to your preferences. And thankfully for a wine novice like me, each box comes with educational materials for each bottle. So I can learn just enough to at the very least not embarrass myself next time I order wine in public by choosing based solely on how cool the label is. So for a limited time, Bright Cellars is giving my followers $50 off their first 4-bottle box. Just hit the link in the description to get started, and you'll be sipping on some tasty wines in no time. So to start, let's get a little more acquainted with the 5 brewers we're going to be comparing in this video, and there's no better intro to the flat bottom brewer than the Kalita Wave. It is one of, if not the original standard in flat bottom brewers, and they come in a variety of materials like metal and ceramic, and of course glass. Now it's very simple in terms of design. It's essentially just a basic housing for their trademark filters. The only thing in this Kalita that isn't a smooth surface is the floor, that sort of bubbles up slightly, creating, at least in theory, the ability to avoid the filter from essentially sealing and slowing the flow of its 3 exits. Next up in line is the April dripper, and right off the bat you can see its similarities to the overall shape and angle of the Kalita Wave. But once you look inside, you'll notice where it truly deviates from the smooth interior of the Kalita. There are ridges that become increasingly deep as you move down towards the exit. On the floor, instead of it being convex like the Kalita, it's concave, and has 3 small but prominent pillars that aim to lift the filter up and away from the dripper, allowing for an easier drain from its single but rather large exit. This is the new kid on the block, the Oria V3, and of course at first glance we're still in the Kalita range of overall design. The main differences here are the material, a type of plastic called trogamid that resists heat absorption, a bottom with 5 total exits, and lastly, and maybe most importantly, a steeper angle. Next up is the most unique of the flat bottom brewers in terms of design, and it's the only one that doesn't use Kalita filters, and that is the Espro Bloom. Immediately you can see this one is made entirely of steel, and the inside of the dripper is completely smooth, but unlike the other options it has an angled portion followed by a straight up and down portion. The floor itself is very slightly convex, and more so resembles that of an espresso basket than a pour-over dripper, allowing you the ability to also brew filterless. Last but certainly not least is the fellow Stag X. As you can see, it's made of metal, but the exterior is a little misleading, as it does have a slight internal angle and probably the sharpest consistent angle of all the brewers we're looking at today. The floor of the Stag X has some bump outs around the edges and the center, along with 10 small exits. But now that we've had a full look at each of the brewers, let's get on with the making of coffee. So when it comes to brewing coffee, I'm going to use a very strict but simple recipe to get a better understanding of their baseline performance and ease of use. Starting with 15 grams of coffee and 195-degree water, I'll make just 2 pours. A 40-gram 30-second bloom, followed by a 200-gram pour, putting out roughly 100 grams per 30 seconds. and finally a gentle swirl during the drawdown. Each brewer will also use the same coffee on the exact same grind size and the same filter, with the only exception in that department being the bloom. Starting with the Kalita Wave, overall the brew itself tasted decent, with a mild overall acidity and a creamy mouthfeel, but it also had a hint of sourness and astringency in the finish, but not something entirely unpleasant. With a total brew time of 2 minutes and 19 seconds, it extracted 20.05%, which is well within the ideal range of 18 to 22. Next, the April Dripper, which put out a nicely textured, very well balanced and tasty cup. Overall it was very pleasant and drinkable, but doesn't really stand out in any particular way. It ran with a total brew time of 3 minutes and 7 seconds, and it extracted 21.52%. The newest edition, the Oria V3, produced a well-balanced cup leaning a bit more towards the sweeter side. One of its draws for me is it also has higher clarity than many other flat bottom options I've tried, which tend to lean more towards body and complexity. With a total brew time of 2 minutes and 37 seconds, it extracted 20.51%. The Espro Bloom produced a relatively mild, balanced, but surprisingly flat cup, lacking the character that many of the other drippers produced with the same coffee. With a total brew time of 2 minutes and 22 seconds, it extracted 20.25%. And finally, the Fellow Stag X, which produced a balanced brew with a smooth mouthfeel, and it comes in with just a little bit of clarity but far more complexity, all while still carrying through the character of the coffee. With a total brew time of 2 minutes and 26 seconds, it extracted 21.15%. Okay, so now that we've actually done all the brewing and all the data has been collected, let's sit down and see what this actually shows us. And just from a quick glance, already I can tell you that either fortunately or unfortunately, depending on how you look at it, there's no massive differences. There's no breaking news or shocking headlines. But if you're this far into a video where we're comparing 5 different cone-shaped things that brew coffee, I'm going to venture a guess that you're into the minutia. And there is a lot of sweet, sweet minutia. If you think back to the section where I talked about the design of each of these brewers, it's clear that even though the differences from an overall perspective are subtle, they matter in a variety of ways. Considering the brewer with the oldest design, the Kalita Wave, produced the lowest extraction and the least tasty brew of the group, this could be a clear demonstration of how our continued understanding of brewing dynamics has elevated the functionality of brewer design. For instance, look at the April Dripper. With just a few internal tweaks, it produced the highest extraction in the group. Now, standing back and looking at all the data, the brews, and how they tasted, and all the designs of the drippers, there isn't one that I would consider to be bad, but there are a couple standouts. Coming in as an honorable mention, the April Dripper strikes a nice balance between beauty and functionality, and comes as a set with a cup, saucer, and lid. Second place for me is the Fellow Stag. Now, I've never really been shy about my frustrations with Fellow because they feel more like a lifestyle brand and caring more about aesthetics than a company making quality coffee equipment, but they really hit the nail on the head with this one. It brews cups with some clarity and a good amount of complexity, and it does it all with very little barista input. It does have some struggles in the consistency department, but it's still a good option for those looking to maintain the coffee's character while reducing some of its inherent acidity and bitterness. And finally, first place, and this might not be a shock to some of you who've watched the channel before, but the Oria V3 stands out to me as the overall winner. It's become the brewer that I most often reach for because of its quick and incredibly simple brewing dynamics. With little to no stalls or brewing defects, a large sweet spot in terms of grind sizes, and an uncanny ability to brew tasty cups 9 times out of 10 just makes it hard to beat. But with all that said, I think it's time I wrap this one up and pass the conversation on to you. What are your thoughts on all these drippers? Do you have one or more? And if so, has your experiences mirrored mine? And also, which one would you choose as your daily driver? Drop your answers to those questions and any others you may have in the comments section down below. And as always, I'll see y'all next week. Thanks for watching, and if you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Hit that little bell button for notifications of new videos posted every Friday. Check out my Instagram at Sprometheus for content throughout the week, my blog at Sprometheus.com, and as always, stay caffeinated. Pony Boy.